The Gilded Age brought a persistent issue to the American economy: monopolies. Yet names like Rockefeller, Carnegie, Mellon, Morgan, and Vanderbilt were all contentedly confined to the realm of goods and transportation. But branching outward, the burgeoning newspaper industry would have to welcome a rather wealthy businessman from San Francisco to the pinnacle of American media. In 1887, 24-year-old William Randolph Hearst took control of the San Francisco Examiner. The self-proclaimed monarch of the dailies promptly set about hiring Jack London, Ambrose Bierce, and Mark Twain because he could. Within 3 years, Hearst's paper became the predominant moneymaker anywhere near San Francisco. But he wasn't done. In 1895, William Randolph Hearst bought the New York Journal, hiring one Stephen Crane. In fact, Hearst started the careers of a few well-known writers. It was a young Arthur Brisbane, for instance, who first achieved fame as an editor for Hearst. Brisbane would later become an advisor to Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and John D. Rockefeller. 3 years later, William Randolph Hearst decided he needed to sell more papers. Only 1 million readers per day? Perish the thought. And what sells papers better than a war? So when the Maine sunk in Havana Harbor, Hearst pounced. In a world without the internet, he was able to invent and exaggerate tales of Spanish atrocities in Cuba, and the people believed him. The journal suggested Spanish sabotage was to blame for the sinking of the Maine, despite zero evidence in the affirmative. But as the displeasure of the masses reached a fever pitch, the damage was done. As Kenneth White writes, the Spanish-American War would be, quote, dubbed the Journal's War due to the paper's immense influence in provoking American outrage against Spain, unquote. William Randolph Hearst stood in the eye of the storm. 2 decades later, Hearst helped Henry Cabot Lodge veto the League of Nations through the mobilization of his then 28 major publications under the umbrella of the originally named Hearst Communications. After this brief aside, Hearst spent most of the Roaring Twenties expounding upon the evils of marijuana. For the man had a significant stake in the wood pulp industry because paper. In the end, Hearst's crusade had published some truths, but most articles were stuffed with hyperbole and lies. For example, Hearst claimed marijuana caused vicious attacks from blacks and Mexicans. By 1937, marijuana was banned. Brief aside, this allowed Pierre Dupont to get a patent for a new product known as vinyl. Did I pronounce that right? Probably not. Impact. The Spanish-American War, sparked by Hearst, marked the start of the American imperialism. Millions of lives would be lost fighting overseas in a series of conflicts that can be traced back to the Journal's war. The unique circumstances in which the United States could become the preeminent power in the world were made possible by Hearst. Any discussion of the American emergence from its pseudo-isolationist shell must begin with William Randolph Hearst. The League of Nations veto ensured Americans would once again retreat from the world stage to some degree. Hearst Communications papers played a significant role in swaying public opinion towards the sides of Henry Cabot Lodge as Congress rejected Versailles. Without the backing of the United States, Europe would fail to contain the rise of fascism. And that is what we call negative impact. William Randolph Hearst impacted American history in a variety of ways, primarily through the use of his armada of newspapers. Without Hearst, the history of the United States would be very different indeed. It's the man's impact, both positive and negative, that allow him to stand out as a catalyst of change. Try imagining a world with decades-delayed American imperialism. Imagine the United States with recreational marijuana and decent foreign relations. The reason it's so difficult is because of Hearst's ridiculous impact on the course of this nation's history. Thank you.